It's just wonderful. And I know, I know you can use plugins and you can find a way of trying to get that sound. But I defy anyone to sit here and say that's not more fun. That's so much fun. And it's so fast. Hi, hope that you're well, or if you're new, thanks for checking out the channel. I'm Matt from Distant Sun Studios, and at the end of last week's video, Can I Build the Beatles 1969 Studio, I mentioned that I placed an order for a vintage Neve console. Well, thanks to Dale at SX Pro, a few months ago I spent the day at Neve, where I was given the full VIP treatment. A massive thank you to David and Joe, who really looked after us for the day. So, sit back, relax, grab yourself a cup of coffee and enjoy. Hello, good morning. And here we are. It's Thursday the 10th of July in 2025, and well, it's a really really exciting day for me. I didn't get much sleep last night, I have to confess, maybe 3 or 4 hours at best, because today I'm on my way to the Neve Factory in Burnley in England, and I've got a pretty good idea in my mind of the console that I really want to hear. And yeah, if all goes well, I'm going to buy one. Which I never thought those words would come out of my mouth. But that's the plan. The reason why I'm up here is I'm out with my... I'm just keeping an eye on him now, making sure he's behaving himself. I'm out with my little dog, Frosty. He's only 8 months old. Yes, you're out of breath a bit, aren't you? Yes, you're having a lovely run this morning, aren't you? It'll be a nice hot day today. That's it. There you go. Who's a good boy? Who's a good boy? Oh yes, let's eat some grass. That's a very good idea. Oh, we're not meant to do that. Not on camera. No. Hi everyone. So I'm back again, and this is Dale from SX Pro. Come on.
Conrad hiding there.
And here's Conrad, and the chariot awaits. So here we go. It's the exciting moment. We're about to set off, and yeah, I'll film what I can from Neve. And as you can hear, my dog Frosty is already not happy.
I'm Dale from SX Pro. I'm here with Matt today. We've made it all the way up to AMS Neve in Burnley to have a look around the factory floor, have a look at some lovely consoles, and of course the BCM10 16 channel that Matt's here to have a good look at today. Cool. Excited?
Yeah.
Something that we no longer manufacture, but an interesting piece of Neve history. This is the second Rupert Neve console ever built. Yeah, so that's... we think he built this before it was even Neve Electronics. It's just part of his hobby thing. And this went into RCA as a radio thing. And it was used to send... it was used on a Sunday evening show, which had musicians and drama readings, things like that. And it sent the talent down to a basement room that had a speaker and a microphone. The microphone came back up into this, and this mixed the echo chamber into what I said.
It's great. I love that.
It's like the flathead screws and everything as well.
It's unbelievable.
It's a bag of character, isn't
it's a real DIY
Bass and treble, great.
And you've got your 1960s Formica kitchen tabletop on there as well.
Yeah.
So you can mix and match these things.
Yes.
It's taking the best parts of the best consoles and just putting them into something that's accessible to someone.
So which EQ is this? Is that the...
That's from the 8108.
Yes, I thought it was, yeah.
So it's not a well-known one, but it's a very, very accurate one. These are used a lot for in mastering rooms.
Right.
So that last stage, just to really fine-tune the EQ on the whole thing. So that's the real power of that.
It's got more bands than the 1073, hasn't it?
Yeah. So it's very, very surgical.
Yeah.
And then obviously we've got the compressors there. We've got a single channel 2254R, which is a Dowd bridge compressor. Loosely based on the 33609. Sorry, the 33609 is loosely based on the 2254, but obviously a dual mono or a stereo unit. These are everywhere. Like usually at the end. I mean, nowadays people call them bus compressors, but they were never really bus compressors. They were just compressors at the end.
Yes.
Absolutely fantastic sounding box. And we got 3 of those together and bolted them into the 8051, which nowadays is kind of out of date because it's a 5.1 compressor, and 5.1's been leapfrogged by Atmos.
Yes.
But that's basically 3 of those together that you can control.
Right.
So you stick a 5.1 signal into that, and it will compress channels accordingly with side chains.
And did this come from a stereo unit? I remember seeing a wooden box.
It was originally originally the 2254 was a square-looking unit in the console.
Yes.
In the console.
Yeah.
So what we did to make it 19-inch rack mount, we had to obviously change the physical footprint to like a thin rack rather than a square front panel. Physically it's changed, but the circuitry inside is exactly the same.
And sonically, is that more vintage than this?
Definitely, yeah. That wouldn't necessarily be a bus compressor. So you could have 2 of those on the end.
Yes.
But it's a bit rock and roll.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas that's more clean.
Yes.
That's a bit more involved. So we generally sell those in single channels so that you can use them as an insert on, say, an 8816 or a console or whatever on a particular channel rather than the whole thing.
And can you stereo link those? Sorry.
You can stereo link them. Kind of. What you can do, there's a link between units, and you can have, say, 20 of these things, and you can link them through.
Yes.
And whichever compressor gets the loudest signal, that will control everything below it.
Yeah.
So if that signal is changing dynamically, let's say a drum comes into this one really loud, but then a vocal comes into that one really loud.
Yeah.
It will switch between what's controlling what dynamically. So
So you could, in theory, have a pair of those as a stereo bus.
Yep. This is obviously where it all started. This is the classics. So the 1073 on the left. These were. This made it exactly the same way they were in 1968 when it first launched. So huge, really. If you feel the weight of it.
Yeah.
So if you imagine 48 of those in a console, and then you've got your routing modules and your faders and your centre section and your power supplies, you instantly get to a 2-ton console there if you're not careful. The large ones. So these were very, very heavy consoles in the day. That's what we did with the 500. So we realised quite early on that there's no way you can shrink that into a 500 series module. That went out the window straight away. So what Robin did quite cleverly, the designer, he designed the 1073 input and output stage on that module and put it into a 500 series, and that worked well. But he also put an insert link in the circuit, which means that when we designed the LBEQ, it's exactly the same circuit as that in a 500, but as well as having its own inputs and outputs, it's got an insert link as well. So your microphone comes in, input stage, and then it goes out to this through the EQ, and then comes back into this for the output stage. So even though they're 2 separate modules, with a special cable linked together, it's exactly the same audio path.
What's that?
We've done a similar thing with the 2264 as well, of course, which are stereo linkable. Yeah. I've used them like that in a few of our videos.
Yeah, they're good. Yeah,
really nice compressor.
Yeah, they're good.
That was the EQ I was thinking of, actually, the 1081. That was the
1081.
That was the.
Yeah, that's a rock and roll EQ. People love that. They love it on drums.
You can get those in pairs, Matt. There's a 19-inch rack so you can just get 2 channels. Yeah. You can get like a rack of 8 of them, can't you, or a stereo rack as well.
Yeah, we make a rack where there are 2 of them horizontal or 8 of them vertically.
Yes. And the BCM10 is traditionally 1073.
It's 1073s. By default, it's fitted with 1073Ns, which I can show you in a moment. Optionally, we can fit it with 1073s, classic, what we call classics, hand-wired. Or we could fit it with 1084s. The 1084 is exactly the same mic pre as a 1073, there's no difference. It's just that the EQ slightly different, slightly more flexible.
Got the 2 extra bands in the high frequency.
So by default, the BCM10 comes with what we call the 1073N. The difference between the N and the original is physically nothing. It's exactly the same size, it weighs the same, but this is 80% machine made, not hand wired. It gives us an advantage in that particular module, a mic input, a line input, and an output. So you can use this standalone. So you can carry that with you. And anywhere you've got a microphone and a mains supply, you can actually record using that. So we fit these as standard into the BCM because they sound exactly the same as the classics. There's no difference. And B, it keeps the price down. Yes. If you want to be a purist and you want to go with the originals, we can fit those, but they're not cheap.
There's like a trade-up price, isn't there, basically?
Yeah, they're not cheap. But people say, what's the difference between this and that? And it's literally the price and having the label classic hand-wired.
Yes.
That's the only difference.
It's actually more fully featured, isn't it? With the
This is better.
Yeah.
Well,
Because
the fact you can take that with
you can take that out of your
You can have a
BCM.
little rack and
Yeah, because a lot of BCM10 customers, these are supplied. If you order a 1073N, they come with a nice little its own little rack. So when people have ordered BCM10s and you talk through them what the differences are, they usually ask us if we can send 2 of the enclosures along with the BCM10, so they can literally take 2 of the modules out,
Yes.
put them into these enclosures and take them to another studio or to
Yes.
on location and
Yeah.
record. So there's a lot of flexibility there.
yeah.
The DPX,
Massive success, this one.
that's huge. Yeah, that's been a good seller for us. That's 2 1073 mic pre's and EQs in a
Yes.
unit, in a single unit.
DIs.
Yeah,
And inputs on the front as well as the rear. Which makes for an interesting switching options. And of course digital options.
See, I know somebody that should
Yeah.
buy one of those, so I'll be having words with him.
that's it, yes.
For you.
here's a few movies that we've been involved in. So each one of these has either had the score recorded on a Neve 88R or the finished soundtrack mixed on a DFC, or in most cases both. But the soundtrack is recorded months, if not years, before the actual
Yes.
movie, so that's more or less done.
Yeah.
And then obviously the live shots are done, and then the post-production for the visuals, and then the very last stage is the audio mix,
Yes.
which is quite compressed and quite pressured sometimes.
Yes.
Now this was destined for Japan, and we think along the years another one went to Japan and this one came back. We're not quite sure, but 2 years ago we got a call from the same company I mentioned about who does the crating and the shipping. The same company called us and said, look, we've been having a clear out and we've found this big old green flight case in the corner covered in dust. We've no idea what's inside it. Do you want to come and take a look? This was in there, and it's been with them for about 35 years
My God.
in a flight case covered in dust.
So they were like,
I
oh,
just-
we're not ready for shipment yet, but we'll tell you when to ship, okay.
Yeah,
And that just never did.
It never happened, and they lost it in a corner because they've got a huge warehouse. They just lost it in a corner, and it's even got the original setup floppy disk in it.
Oh, yeah.
So, can I have a look at that?
So a true 5 1/4 inch floppy disk. Again, we don't want to switch it on. There might be some valuable data on there. There could be some government.
I can remember these as well.
Yeah, CRTs.
I did work experience at Central TV,
Oh, I know Central quite well.
and I can remember seeing the desk, and there was something like this there, and then a guy. The thing I remember about that is the most bizarre thing, is a guy came in to do a voiceover, and he had like. Is it the Guinness expert where he says it's probably the best lager in the world?
Carlsberg.
Carlsberg,
Yeah.
sorry. So he had that really deep voice. And anyway, he came in, this guy, he was huge, and he was smoking a cigarette, and he had like a whiskey or something with him. And he sat down, and he did about 10 minutes, and then he stepped up and he went out. And the engineer turned to me and he goes, "That's the quickest £1,000 you'll ever see anybody in." And his voice was that valuable, but
Wow.
he was kind of saying, he said, "I got no idea how many cigarettes or drinks he's had to have to get to that
Yeah,
point."
yeah.
Which, don't drink and smoke, kids.
That's the moral of the story. Yeah.
Yeah.
Despite the money,
But,
look after yourself.
Yeah, but no, it was,
So this is an example of a DFC digital film console that is used to mix the film soundtracks at the very last stage of the audio production. This is a small example. They're generally twice as wide. So what tends to happen is these are installed in cinema-sized rooms, kind of 2/3 away from the screen. Team of 3 engineers usually work on these. The person in the middle mixes the dialogue, because that's mainly central. Person on the left does the music, and person on the right does the effects, gunshots, door slams, that kind of thing.
yes.
And they work as a team. The music person is generally the first to finish, and it does the mix and walks away, because the music is fairly straightforward. The dialogue and the effects are a bit more interleaved with everything. So
Yes.
at the back you've got your producer and your director barking commands at the team. More guns, more bass, and they work long shifts. And then what tended to happen is once everybody was happy with how it sounded, the B team rolled in, and they worked for about 2 weeks, 24/7, running mix after mix after mix after mix. So they'd run a mix without any dialogue. They'd run a mix with mono. They'd run a stereo mix. They'd run a 7.1 mix, 5.1 mix, early Atmos mixers, and then they'd do it with no dialogue, as I said, for different territories. And before you know it, you've got 30 different deliverables, 30 different mixes or end results for that film that people then went off and did. Crazy, crazy, crazy.
Yeah.
Nowadays, we help develop Atmos with Dolby, because this can mix Dolby natively. So the whole object metadata core of Atmos, this just spits out automatically. And the first film to come out in Atmos was actually Disney Pixar's Brave, but it wasn't a true Atmos mix. It was upmixed from 5.1. And then it was a Tom Cruise film, Oblivion. That was the first ever true Atmos mixed film on a DFC. But this can control all the objects.
Right.
So this can mix up to 2,000 paths at 96k.
Jeez.
Yeah, there are some films that do it.
Yeah.
Rewinding back to mid-2000s, we were at a stage where we were capable of mixing 512 paths at 96k, and that was more than enough for anybody.
Yeah.
And then we got a call from Fox in LA and said, look, we need a console, but we need 1,000 paths. And we said, well, why? I said, well, we just need it. And then they called back and said, actually, it's 2,000 paths.
Oh, God.
So the only thing that we could do was get our current engine, as it was, and bolt 4 of them together and synchronise them, and that gave us 2,000 paths. And that was the first use of that console was for Avatar.
Right.
It was James Cameron going overboard on budget and saying, I want to do more than anybody else. So he went for the 2,000 path mark.
Of course he did.
Because he could. Because he could.
Taking a leaf out of George Lucas.
And it's a bit weird, really, because I remember watching Avatar for the first time, and there's an awful lot of silence in that film. There's an awful lot of quiet. 2,000 paths of it. But yeah, that console, I mean, it's been upgraded along the years, but it's still in daily use out there.
Yeah.
So yeah, it cost them $1.2 million at the time, but it's more than paid for itself.
Yeah. I've got a console question for you while I remember. So, when you're mixing, I've done, and I do the mixing videos and stuff, there's all the digital stuff like the Pro Q3 where you can sweep and find any frequency and but I'm always really a big fan of going back to the fixed point frequencies, because you just select a frequency, you can notch it up and down, and I don't need to tell you, you can. It's very musical. Now I think that I'm right in saying that Jeff Emmerich and George Martin worked with Neve for those to make suggestions as to what those EQ points should be. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. One of the really, really involved consoles at the time was the Air Montserrat console, which George Martin worked with Rupert Neve and Robin actually together.
Yes, that's right.
And there were 3 consoles made. They were all originally intended for Air. So one went into Air London, one went to Air Montserrat, and the second one was intended to go to Air Montserrat, but I don't think it was ever installed. Despite all the volcanic eruptions and hurricanes on that island, which eventually saw it off, all 3 consoles are still operational today, which is quite remarkable. Air still got the one in London. Brian Adams has got one, and a guy in Toronto's got one at the Warehouse, I think it's called Studios, but they're all running. It's remarkable, really.
Yes, yeah.
Future Matt here. I did get to see my beloved BCM10 on the factory floor. In fact, this was a 16-channel version that is exactly the same as the one that I've ordered. In the demo room there was a slightly different console, the Neve 8424. And here's Joe to guide me through that now. I'm going to try and rebuild Abbey Road in 1969. And that's where the BCM10 comes in, and that's where I've got some of the old Chandler gear.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And it's kind of like, it just sound phenomenal.
It certainly will. Yeah.
So,
all the good gear in there, it's definitely going to have an impact on the sound. I think it's what I always say about the equipment is you don't necessarily need to have good analog gear to get a really good sound, but it makes it so much easier if you do.
Yes.
There are people who work with plugins exclusively, but these are very, very skilled people who have all the time in the world to finesse and tweak. And at the end of the day, they're trying to get the same sound that you can get on a piece of like a Neve console in 5 minutes. You just turn the faders up, good microphone, obviously good source material. Put it through the console and you just turn it up and it's there. The balance is pretty much done. So.
Yeah. No, because Michael Brower, he's gone completely in the box, and he's got, I can't remember the chap's name who's his assistant, and what they've done is they've kind of recreated the sounds of his, because in his, you've probably seen his old studio where he'll just patch in the different, he'll just say, can you put that on or that on? So they've recreated it, but you've like in some instances like got a chain of 6 different plugins that his assistant has spent weeks tweaking until he can recreate the sound of that one particular box. And when I started using Luna, that was the thing, was I knew if I just inserted the tape across and then I inserted, it's an API console and that's it, but I put that across, and even if you just engage the EQ so that circuit goes in, it adds. And then you've got the summing, and it's got the Neve summing on it that you can put in. And suddenly, the song, if you take it away and then put it on, the song instantly starts to glue. And although it's an emulation, I got that, because that's kind of where I came from as a musician. So I just thought, well, if I'm going to get a console, it's like SSL just brought out the new console. You know, looks amazing and everything, but it's like, well, yeah, but that's really not me. I want the sound. I want the sonic. I want the character. And
of course,
well, you saw me looking at that BCM10. So that's where I am.
Oh, good stuff. Yeah. Well, I mean, initially when saw the information come in via email, it was one of these with EQs and compressors and everything, I thought that's kind of going for a BCM type sound, you know. By having all of that on here. You're kind of turning this console H424 into a BCM basically. So it was good that we had the one on the shop floor for you to check out. But yeah, I mean, we've still got this one here as well. So if you want to kind of run some stems through, you can have a listen to this. And this is a very similar kind of footprint. The 8424 has the 80 series mix bus, so it's voltage mixing basically. Which is the same as the old consoles, same as the BCM, where the mix bus total, all of the summing of all the channels is reduced down to a lower level, around minus 50 dB. At which point it's then re-amplified through a pair of transformers and through the mix bus transistors or op amps to give you the final output level. So it's almost like strapping a pair of 1073s on the mix output. That's kind of the summing sound you get from these vintage consoles. This has it, BCM has it. Some of the modern Neves are a little bit different. So Genesis is a little bit different, which is more similar to the 88R. So that's a virtual earth current mix bus. A bit more transparent, but wider bandwidth and open. Whereas these the older consoles definitely had a more kind of warmer sound. Well, the classic way to describe it, but you can hear the difference between the two. But yeah, so if I can run some stems through this, you can have a listen to some of this. You've got the transport in the middle for stop and play if you want to restart it.
Which one? Sorry, here.
Yeah.
So that was the 57, and then this was the Roy.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah.
So then
That's 57 is just a bit more spiky, isn't it?
So if you do that, then you bring.
Yeah. They work quite well together.
No, they did. They really complement. Yeah.
You got one on, one off axis.
No, they're both.
They're both just flat on.
They're both coming like that. So they're both just pointing at the same spot.
Yeah.
But then I put the Royer on the guitar neck.
Yeah.
So it's not getting the bass that comes out here.
Yeah,
and the 57's that side. So,
nice.
And then just kind of, got them the same distance. So hopefully the phases. So then this is the threshold here.
Yeah, threshold is the top middle part, yeah.
And that's fixed. I'm trying to remember what you said. So that's auto release.
Yeah, auto release 2, you can change that here.
Yeah.
And then you have ratio on this, and then makeup gain.
And there's no attack
here. The attack's either slow or fast. So it's currently set to slow attack here. But you can
so
set
it's down here, is it? Yeah, so I want it on slow,
Yeah.
Okay, so it's just really those two I need to worry about.
Yeah.
And then, what happens if I do that then?
That's like, disables the compressor. So there's an independent bypass for the compressor and the limiter. So you could just use it as a limiter if you want, or you could just use it as a compressor, or both.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So I'll probably leave the limiter off at first and then just listen to the compressor side. Got the gain reduction meters here at the top just to see how much you're taking off. So it's quite the ratio is quite low at the moment.
Yeah.
So it's not doing too much to it. It's not gripping it too much. But those 2264s, they have there's 3 transformers as well. So there's, in addition to what you're getting with the transient control, you're also imparting quite a lot of colour and flavour to it. Even if it's bypassed, you're still adding that circuitry into the signal path. So you still get a nice kind of warmth and tone to it.
Yeah.
But it's a diode bridge compressor as well, so it's a very unique Neve design, which has got some unique characteristics. Really good for mixed buses, smooth. But you can even use them on individual things as well. I found them quite nice on bass, really good on vocals, quite forgiving.
Awesome on vocals. I find they give a nice thickness to the sound as well. They seem to like compress bass slightly differently to the rest of the signal in a way.
Definitely, yeah. So the width function.
Oh, great! Yeah. Listen.
Basically, that you can engage the width, and then rotating to the left basically enhances the subs of the mono. So you're almost down to a mono, not fully, but you're almost down to a mono. And then you can get all the way up to stereos around 1 o'clock position. And then all the way up to like a hyper wide, but it's still musical even when you're at the maximum width. You can hear the difference from you. Toggle that in and out.
Especially when you're using faders like this, it's so quick to get where you need to be. It's like you can just, it doesn't frighten me to do this. I can just do that. Well, that's a master, though. I shouldn't have really done that. But I can get that mix back now, and I'll show you. I can get that back within certainly within 1 pass, if not 2 minutes. But you can just find it. So I normally, with the drums, I'll go for just trying to find it. So I think they're my overheads there. So if I do the drums. So you bring up your overheads and then bring in the kick, and you can. See, with your fingers you can just you can actually push into it. Now when it's all digital and it's clean, you're kind of desperately trying to find where it sits. Whereas with this, you can actually do quite big movements, and it just will glue it.
Of course, because it's so tactile as well, you end up mixing with your ears.
Yeah, and
It
then
doesn't matter where that fader lands, just as long as it sounds right.
And then you bring in a bit of a snare. That's the hi-hat there, isn't it? There. Still on the ride. That's a mono overhead is the hi-hat. And then a bit of ambient. Bass. And let's bring up guitar. Go. So, I don't know how long that took, but
Long and tall, yeah.
you got a static mix within literally playing like quarter of the song. I mean, normally getting a static mix on a door where you're going in, I mean, you'll be going, well, you'll know, you go around how many times to actually get to the point where you kind of got the faders where you want them.
Yeah.
Whereas with the, it's like with the panning with this, I wanted to put that guitar left, so I just done. I mean, and the compressor here is just gorgeous. You can just bring it in and out. So, to find my way around.
There you go.
There you go. So there's no compression on that, and instantly you've just got. It's just a gorgeous sound, and it just pulls all the instruments together. How do we? The other thing I wanted to show is how do we take that out all together? Which is the button for that?
Here, this one. So that's takes these 500s out of the insert path. Yeah.
Because I think if I just even engage that circuit, it will add. So that's just the transformer, and you can hear the warmth that. I can hear it. I can just hear that. The tone of a Neve there, and then you actually bring a bit of compression in. And it may even be a tighter, a bit too much. Probably there.
Yeah.
So I mean, it barely even flickers on the meter.
Yeah, you're probably at peak. Maybe around 1 dB, just slightly over.
But you actually don't need to look at the meter because you can hear it. And when you bring it in and out, it's just wonderful. Absolutely phenomenal. And I know, I know you can use plugins and you can find a way of trying to get that sound. But I defy anyone to sit here and say that's not more fun. That's so much fun. And it's so fast. I mean, Christ, I did that in, 2 minutes? I've never sat in front of a Neve console before, and I'm already driving this thing, and it's just, take my money and send me one, please.
And the BCM should have even more of that transformer tone.
Yeah, well, how many? There's a white transformer in each one of these.
Yeah, and there's a pair of transformers on the mix bus.
Yeah.
Which is similar to the BCM on the output. However, the BCM basically triples, quadruples that up, just on the mix bus alone, because it goes through the 1272 modules, and each channel contribution has a transformer as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's quite a lot more going on there.
So I mean, when I was doing when I press the 500 button, I bring the transformers in there in and out. You can hear what that's actually doing without applying any compression, and that's 2 transformers. They're Mariner transformers.
Yeah, Mariner transformers. Yeah.
Now we were looking at the BCM earlier, and that's got 130 in it.
Yeah.
So you can imagine when I run through that, what that's going to sound like. And the thing is that when you do that, you're not reaching. I mean, I haven't done anything to this. I mean, those guitars were literally just recorded flat through a Chandler preamp, a little bit of, maybe a tiny little bit of a high pass up to 60 or something. But that's it. I haven't done anything to them, and they already sound good. And there's no compression on that at all, other than what's on the two-bus. So anything you're adding in terms of a tiny bit of EQ or compression is going to be small, because all of the tone of the console is doing all the work for you. It's so easy.
Yeah.
I always imagined it like there's a little mix engineer that lives inside it, just fixes
Well,
it
it's
for
just-
you.
Yeah.
Or Mix Fairy.
Yeah.
I mean, in Luna, with Luna, I did a video on Luna where you kind of take what are called the extensions, which is essentially a tape machine,
Yeah.
and then the Neve summing in and out.
Right. Yeah.
And it is radically different. And when you start to mix through that, it starts to get you a little bit towards this, which is obviously what it's trying to emulate.
Yeah.
The sonic character that gives you is just, in fact, I'm in a very, very privileged position to be sat behind one and ultimately buying one. I'm very, very lucky man. Never thought I would.
Brilliant.
Give me 12 weeks.
Fantastic.
Incredible. Well, there you go. And as you could see, it really was an incredible day. If you've missed the first video in this series, well, that's just here. I'm Matt from Distant Sun Studios. Cheers.